Hello everyone, let's talk about the Matilda movie, shall we? Now I recently did a video talking about the Wonka movies. I had a few comments suggesting that I should talk about the original Matilda movie as well as its recent musical movie that came out last year. I am a massive fan of the first Matilda movie. I think it's one of those great movies that works for kids and adults. It's also one of those movies that no matter how much time passes, it still feels fresh and exciting and new. It hasn't really aged poorly. I also saw the Broadway musical live, so I was familiar with Matilda's musical version before the Netflix adaptation came out. And only recently I just watched the Netflix film adaptation of that. I want to do a deep dive today into both movies and sort of what works in both, what doesn't work in some of them.
From the author of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and James and the Giant Peach. And the unique vision.
What did you do to your hair?
Of director Danny DeVito, Matilda.
Now, I think this first movie's biggest strength is how well defined the characters are, as well as the performances. Obviously, Matilda herself in this original is fantastic.
Tell Jesus that the bitch is back. I was in a 2-on-2 on the uptown, and nigga, you know what's up, or don't you?
It's a great child performance, like an all-time great child performance. As a performance, this original Matilda is great because as an audience, we really like her and are really rooting for her, but we also completely get why she rubs her parents and these lower class people the wrong way. We totally get why Miss Trunchbull can't stand her and why her own parents can't stand her. Obviously, it's an unfortunate thing that her parents don't like her, but we totally get, given who Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood are, why they just can't stand her and why they see her as so uppity. It is...
I want to be in school. I told you I was supposed to start school in September. You wouldn't listen.
I'm great. I'm incredible. Michael, pencil and paper in the kitchen. You're a little cheat. You saw the paper.
From all the way over here?
Are you being smart with me? If you're being smart with me, young lady, you're going to be punished.
Punished for being smart?
For being a smart aleck. When a person is bad, that person has to be taught a lesson.
Person?
She is very much the Lisa Simpson, Rachel Berry archetype, and it drives them nuts. It's so intimidating to have someone so intelligent around you, especially when you aren't intelligent. I think with Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood, I think the interesting thing is they obviously can't handle how intelligent Matilda is. And not only does it rub them the wrong way due to what they're into in life and how they choose to live their life, Matilda almost seems like an existential threat to them because they created her and she's infinitely smarter than them, and it's almost this thing of like, it's not coming from you and I, so like where is it coming from? If a child starts succeeding more than their parents at any age, there is a sort of level of discomfort that is sort of like unspoken. I think this movie taps into that really well. Danny DeVito, him as Mr. Wormwood, he is just so committed to being an absolute abomination of a father and just a terrible piece of shit. But there's almost something I admire in how committed he is to being just a terrible parent. You get this sense of glee from him when he's bragging about how he rips off people with his cars.
The sawdust quiets the gears and lets the engine run as sweet as a nut for a couple of miles.
That is just, it's so tangible and feels so lived in.
Two-directional drill. You run it backwards, the numbers go down. Watch your speedometer.
Cool.
I mean, maybe I'm a massive piece of shit, but as an audience member, I'm almost like rooting for him. I'm like, wow, good job with that scam. When the cops / bodybuilders are investigating him later in the movie, I don't want him to get stepped on. It seems like him ripping off people makes him so happy that it's like, why would we want to get in the way of that?
The second one cost $512. I sold it for $2,269.
The highlight of the movie for me, for sure, is when Matilda and Mr. Wormwood are engaged in this like intellectual and telekinetic battle of wits, and she's basically just pranking him.
You're a little cheat. You saw the paper. Are you being smart with me? Do you make money? Do you have a job?
No, but don't people need good cars? Can't you sell good cars, Dad?
Listen, you little wiseacre. I'm smart, you're dumb. I'm big, you're little. I'm right, you're wrong.
Here's your hat, Daddy.
Get in the car. I can't get her off. I can't get her off. I can't get her off.
I'm gonna get this hat off. Yeah, one more.
From now on, this family does exactly what I say Exactly when I say it.
All his reactions, all the family reactions to the pranks that happened to his hair and with the hat are just hysterical. Like, genuinely some of the greatest comic timing and comic set pieces, and that's before any of the supernatural stuff comes in. Just as a dysfunctional family comedy, this is up there with like peak Simpsons. The way the Wormwood family are characterized in this movie, outside of Matilda, is just this white trash, totally dysfunctional family that's just constantly at each other's throats, is pitch perfect. As I've sort of aged and looked at this movie with a more mature perspective, I think it does actually have really interesting things to say about class. Now, obviously, Miss Honey and Matilda are framed as the virtuous, pure, good people in this film. And that's fine. I don't disagree there. But there's this really interesting conversation where Miss Honey comes and talks to the family about getting Matilda a college education. Again, they sort of have this battle of wits where the Wormwood family are kind of shitty on her for getting a college education and saying that they're really happy and they don't need that and they don't want that in their life.
I mean, take a look at you and me. You chose books. I chose looks. I have a nice house, a wonderful husband, and you were slaving away teaching snot-nosed children their ABCs. You want Matilda to go to college?
Miss Honey obviously feels confronted by this notion. The very easy reading of this scene is that the Wormwoods are totally in the wrong, and obviously it's not a good thing to not want your own kid to seize opportunities that are presented to them. I don't agree with them there. I think the interesting thing is as this movie goes on, you start to get a sense that in their own dysfunctional way, the Wormwoods are actually really happy in their own little weird juvenile pocket. You see throughout the movie that as a trio, the Wormwood couple and their son all get along completely fine. They really do have a good time all watching boxing together and like shadow boxing with each other.
Hiya! Whack to the belly, a smack to the face, another smack to the face. Burns is hurt. He's on the ropes, ladies and gentlemen. Saved by the bell.
And having a drink of beer. Matilda and Miss Honey do not want to engage in that at all, and that's totally fine, but it is a total culture clash.
Can you give me a beer?
Her math skills are simply extraordinary. She's reading material that I...
Want one?
Oh, no thank you, dear. Material that I didn't see until my second year of college.
Oh, college.
And of course, Matilda was never going to get along with them, but it reminds me a lot of the characterization that Homer and Lisa used to have in The Simpsons, where Homer always enjoyed dumb dude activities.
You could grate cheese on those abs.
Yeah, but can he do this?
And Lisa always wanted to do something intellectually stimulating. And as much as they tried to get along and bend over backwards for each other, they just sort of realized that at the end of the day, Homer is Homer and Lisa is Lisa, and they'll connect where they can. Now, obviously, the answer in Matilda is that Matilda just leaves and pursues what's better for her.
Why would she want some snotty, disobedient kid?
Because she's a spectacularly wonderful child and I love her.
Adopt me, Miss Honey.
But I do appreciate that the movie goes out of its way to show that outside of Matilda and Miss Honey, that the family can kind of be happy in their own really dysfunctional way. It almost feels like the challenge of being intellectually stimulated or threatened is what brings out the worst in them.
This is a nice place. You can't wear a hat inside.
I can't take it off.
Harry, nobody cares what your hair looks like.
I can't
Look
get
at
it off.
that.
I can't get it off. I can't get it off. You put on the skin.
Oh, you're such a baby. Stop it.
Fibers are fused to the head.
Fibers are fused. What is that supposed to mean? Give me that.
Particularly in that scene where the Wormwoods go to a nice place for dinner, and it's almost this really severe culture clash. You get why they're out of place. They don't help themselves. They're loudly bickering. It almost feels like they were trying to fit into a place that really wasn't for them, and Matilda's prank with the hat almost exposed them for how dysfunctional they really were. I think the thing that I noticed as I grew up and watching this movie is that maybe the Wormwoods aren't particularly bad. They're just not right for Matilda, unfortunately. Disclaimer, that is ignoring the fact that he is illegally ripping off people with his cars. That is bad. That is illegal. That is not good. And yes, the treatment of Matilda is not ideal. I appreciate that the movie sort of shows that they're very simple people and they can be genuinely happy if they're left alone. The scene with Miss Honey where she's trying to stress how important it is to get Matilda college prospects. Wormwoods are very confrontational. They're not very well mannered. but at the same time, there's a level of like kindness that is shown in a really weird, casual way. So for example, Mr. Wormwood asks his son for a beer. Kid actually goes, "Oh, Miss Honey, do you want one?" And the joke there is, of course, she doesn't want to shook up beer on a weeknight. I think it's a good character moment that shows these Wormwood people just see the world differently and navigate life differently than people like Miss Honey and Matilda. I think Miss Honey is perfect. She's obviously a great antithesis to Matilda's family as well as Miss Trunchbull. And she's so sweet. I love how well mannered she is. I like how she stumbles over her words in any confrontation, particularly in the scene where she's telling Miss Trunchbull just how intelligent Matilda is. And she goes, I think that phrasing is like burnt into my memory. I also appreciate that even though Matilda is younger, Matilda actually has more bite than Miss Honey.
No more Miss Nice Girl.
Miss Honey at times almost seems confronted by how intelligent Matilda is, as well as how much bite she has for sort of getting what she wants and like being assertive, which is something that Miss Honey lacks. She is a bit of a pushover. How can we talk about this movie without talking about how good Miss Trunchbull is?
Fresh meat. Amanda Thrip.
You mean my pigtails?
Are you a pig, Amanda?
Did you say butt?
I'll give you butt. Confess.
Well, it's hard for me to remember a specific cake.
This one was mine. How can you be sure?
Unless you have another piece.
Eat it!
You couldn't spell difficulty if your life depended on it.
Miss Trunchbull's unbelievable in this movie. Just an unbelievable comedic tour de force. Her delivery of, "Why are all these women married?"
Why are all these women married?
Just fantastic. All the performances in this movie are what makes this movie. They're just pitch perfect. Every single time an antagonist of this movie is going toe to toe with one of the heroes of the story, it genuinely feels like child Shakespeare. It feels like Logan Roy going against Kendall Roy.
I'm smart, you're dumb. I'm big, you're little. I'm right, you're wrong. And there's nothing you can do about it.
You are a fucking nobody. Fucking nobody.
I also think this movie has a great ability to just craft sequences. That whole Bruce Bogtrotter section where he's eating the cake, it does feel like by the end of it, you've sat there and watched this guy eat a cake in real time. It opens with just the piece, and then we get the reveal that there's the whole cake. We get the introduction to Cookie, and it just goes on and on and on. And by the time he's finished the cake, you feel like you've been in the gulag with him. Quick side note, I love that like Cookie and Trunchbull are basically like cartoonishly villain. They both feel like they're characterized like the Hunchback of Notre Dame or something. Like I love that Cookie comes out genuinely feeling like a witch.
Cookie! Her sweat and blood went into this cake, and you will not leave this platform until you have consumed the entire confection! Entire confection!
Just like hunches off going like, "I'll see you kids for lunch."
See you at lunch.
Thank you, Cookie.
So much of this movie is just like burnt into my memory. I could talk about it all day. I think all the child performances are great. I think Bruce Bogtrotter is so well defined. I love Pigtail Girl. She's hilarious.
Amanda Thrip!
Yes, Miss Trunchbull.
What are those?
What's what, Miss Trunchbull?
Hanging down by your ears.
You mean my pigtails?
Are you a pig, Amanda?
No, Miss Trunchbull.
I love when she's like trying to get the class to like do the difficulty like rhyme with her, and she's like, "Come on guys, like let's do it."
Mrs. D, Mrs. I, Mrs. FFI.
Don't hang me out to dry here, like join in. I think this movie is just a masterstroke in visual communication. It has such a good sense of visual communication, particularly in making young kids feel small in relation to their parents or negative adult figures. There's this great shot where Matilda's like, "Oi, that's illegal!"
Daddy, you're a crook.
What?
This is illegal.
Literally frame her like this tiny child. There's also this great section where the kids are like researching into salamanders, and the camera is like all the way down here, And it really captures a sense, not only as an audience member do you feel like you're one of the kids, but it does a really good job of kind of contextualizing just how small they are and sort of their like limited ability to navigate this really adult world. The movie's visual language is so good because I remember as a kid, it's communicating really strong ideas like superpowers in just a really effective way. You get that Matilda made that TV explode before it's even spelled out clearly that she has supernatural powers. And as a kid, it's just the way it's edited, you like get it. It's just so well done. I just appreciate how gross and vile this movie is willing to be. I also love how guttural it is. There's so many great character quirks and like idiosyncrasies. Like I love when Mr. Wormwood is getting his hat pulled off in public and he almost starts barking like a dog, going like, there's this audio cue that's like burnt into my brain when Miss Trunchbull throws the ball and she goes like, it's stuff that's like so weird that I can't picture coming out in a movie now without our generation being like, that was random, that was so weird, that was so odd, why was that in the movie? Like I appreciate that this movie just sort of has the balls to be so weird, be so off the wall. And I think that's why it stood the test of time. It's just so bold in its presentation. So then Matilda Media chilled out for a while, and then we got a stage musical with music made by Tim Minchin. Now, Tim Minchin, for those who don't know, he's like this genius Australian comic.
Only a ginger can call another ginger ginger. Only a ginger. Sneak up on another ninja. Only a ginger can call another ginger.
The idea of Tim Minchin, who is just this great musical talent, basically making musical songs that are super nihilistic, super tongue-in-cheek, and have a sense of Broadway scale. Whoever chose that, it was just such a genius move. For those who don't know, Tim Minchin made this masterpiece of a 12-minute song once. And basically all this 12-minute song was, he was apparently at a bar and someone said like, oh, you don't believe in God? How can you not believe in God? My grandma got her blindness cured by her local church. And then Tim Minchin went home and made this 12-minute orchestral masterpiece, basically debunking how ridiculous of an idea that is. And it is genuinely one of the best pieces of art in any medium I think I've ever seen.
It's a particular prayer in a particular spot to a particular version of a particular God. And if you got that right, he just might take a break from giving babies malaria and pop down to your local area to fix the cataracts of your mouth.
It's genuinely fantastic. So the idea that Tim Minchin is writing music for a Matilda musical is an incredibly exciting prospect. And the music in that stage play is fantastic. There are so many great moments in that musical score. Watching the stage play, I felt like the songs that were added really did sort of lift up my experience of that original movie, and vice versa. I felt like they really worked well together as like companion pieces. The reason I bring all that up is the movie adaptation of the musical doesn't quite feel as strong as a companion piece. It rather feels like it's in opposition at times, and it feels like it's more of an unfair comparison. So basically, long story short, I did really enjoy the musical. I think it's great, and I implore you to watch it if you ever get a chance. Now, with regards to the Netflix adaptation, the movie version of this musical, I only watched this recently, and I must say, overall, I was incredibly impressed with what Netflix put out. This musical is not perfect, it is not a masterpiece, and it isn't nearly as good as the original Matilda. But there's a lot this movie does that I have to give it credit for. Now, first off, the musical numbers. There is so much effort put into this film's musical numbers. This is not a lazy musical at all. A lot of times with Netflix, you either get movies that feel like genuinely great movies like Irishman and Marriage Story and The Platform. These films that genuinely feel like you're seeing cinema level movies at home. And other times you get these straight to Netflix movies that do feel like straight to DVD, almost like YouTube movies. movies, you know? So I'm thinking stuff like Here's All That, or recently like Red, White and Royal Blue, which was a totally fine movie. So many points in that the production value just felt like straight to DVD level movie. Biggest thing I was impressed with the Netflix version of Matilda was the production value. That opening musical number is full of practical sets. It looks great. It sounds amazing. Whoever mixed and mastered this did such a wonderful job. I forgot to record this originally, but there is this astounding dance sequence that went completely viral on TikTok with this girl in a beret where she like launches into the room. And it exemplifies exactly what I was saying when I was talking about how good these musical sequences are. This is some of the best choreography and filming I've seen in any musical ever. I think this is fucking awesome. And it went viral on TikTok for a very good reason.
I'm a dog, ooh. Car go fast, zoom. I'm on your ass, move. I got a bag, ooh.
I had a lot of patience with the middle of this movie that is a bit of a slog to get to that astounding dance sequence at the end. In saying that, it shows just how much effort, just how much care, and just how much thought was put into the movie and its musical sequences. My biggest thing with the Netflix version of the musical is the fact that the musical sequences themselves are fantastic, but I feel like all the scenes in between, I'm kind of just waiting for the next musical number. I feel like the sections in between just feel like a worse version of what we got in that original Matilda, and it's really unfortunate. I think the parents don't even get close to holding a candle to the original parents. They feel way too cartoonish, way too over the top. They don't feel like real people. Unfortunately, I think Miss Honey is way less engaging. The worst part is 30 minutes or so of this movie are devoted to Matilda sharing this made-up story she has with this librarian. And so throughout the movie, we're following the main trajectory of the plot, and it just grinds to a screeching halt to engage in almost this fantasy that's a metaphor for what Matilda's going through at the moment. And I'm sorry, it just kills the pacing entirely. It throws you away from Miss Trunchbull and Matilda and her parents to basically just engage in like an imaginary sequence. And I don't know why it's there. It's a shame because the musical numbers are so full of life and so creative and so inventive. As I said, I love the opening one where it's basically this song about how kids are miracles, but these parents can't stand it.
Why do bad things always happen to good people?
There's this other great song where Matilda goes to the school. They basically spell out and go through the whole alphabet while comparing the school to a prison. The Bruce Bogtrotter sequence here isn't as good as the Matilda chocolate cake Bruce Bogtrotter sequence, but the musical number again is just so full of life and the sets are so exciting and it's so funny and it's so good. Then the issue is, yeah, in between these musical sequences, you're left with a movie itself that is infinitely worse than the original. But Matilda here, I just find really not engaging as a character. I know that she doesn't like her parents, but I just don't feel it as much. I know that this Matilda feels alone in this world, but I just don't feel it in here as much, and I don't know what the disconnect here is. I will say, by some miracle, despite Miss Honey falling flat in this movie, despite Matilda falling flat in this movie, and despite the parents falling flat in this movie, but good lord, does Emma Thompson turn in one hell of a performance here as Miss Trunchbull.
Man of rebellion comes out in the sweat, and fizzing will get you sweating.
Now, yes, the original Matilda's Miss Trunchbull is iconic.
Why are all these women married?
I would say, given the script she's working with here, she does just as good of a job. Emma Thompson here is fantastic. Now, yes, I don't like the choice to use prosthetics here, but aside from that, Emma Thompson is almost unrecognizable here. Her songs are fantastic. The song she has where she's basically exploding children in like an army-like gauntlet, or basically complaining about kids, and then she has this incredible halftime swung section at the end.
Sickening stench
is genuinely fantastic. It's a fantastic performance. It's a fantastic song. I have to give the Netflix film so much credit for just going completely bonkers, completely off the wall, and having a section where basically this teacher is just trying to explode kids.
Like this interesting discipline.
You know, that first film might have really sweet, reflective scenes about what it means to be a child in an adult world.
Sometimes Matilda longed for a friend,
But I mean, this new Matilda has scenes where kids are getting literally blown up. So, I mean, you tell me what you would prefer. I do have to say one thing about this film's musical numbers, and that is the fact that they are kind of irritating. They're not exactly songs you want to turn up, and I know that's the point. I know they're meant to sound like really young, silly kids. They're meant to match the tone of Roald Dahl's cheeky sort of books. As a listening experience, this is an hour and a half of just songs by kids that are trying to sound irritating and adults that are trying to sound disgusting, and it does kind of grate on your ears after a while. For example, there are a lot of beautiful, beautiful, beautiful melodies in this musical, particularly in the song When I Grow Up.
I will be tall enough to reach the branches that I need to reach to climb the trees.
There are such gorgeous cadences here, but they're sung in a way that make these kids sound like snot-nosed children.
On the way to work and I will go to bed late every night.
You start to get why Matilda's parents or Trunchbull would get annoyed by these kids. They're really, really grating voices.
I'll be strong enough to carry all the heavy things you have to hold.
And I know that's the point, but yeah, after an hour and a half, you start to want to turn the music down a bit, which is a shame because a lot of the music here is great. Before I wrap up here though, I must just say there is this fantastic song that is in the Broadway musical. It is the main song that's stuck in my head with Mr. Wormwood and his son, where he basically sings about how good having a big television is. And basically, it's clearly an analogy for like big dick energy, right? And a dick measuring contest. And instead of it being like, oh, look how fast my car goes, it's Mr. Wormwood going, look how big my television is.
All I know I learned from telly. The bigger the telly, the smarter man. You can tell from my big telly just what a clever fella I am.
You can tell by my big tally just how big of a man I am, right? It's this duet with Mr. Wormwood and his son. And it's basically Mr. Wormwood shitting on the idea of books for like 5 minutes straight. And his son, who almost comes off like he has Tourette's and like learning difficulties, is just in the background yelling out the word tally.
All I know I learned from telly. The bigger the telly, the smarter the man. You can tell from my big telly just how clever of a fella I am.
It's hilarious. It's a song that ends in another great halftime sequence.
All I know I learned from telly. The bigger the telly, the smarter the man.
For the life of me, I don't know why they didn't include this song in the movie version. It is easily the highlight along with Miss Trunchbull's song in that original Broadway musical. And for the life of me, why would you not include that? It is such a great summary of who Mr. Wormwood is, how he sees educated people, and they just chose not to include it. Thank you so much for watching. I implore you to watch both of these movies, and the reason I say that is because this isn't a situation where you're watching the second movie going, oh, this is so much worse, why would they even bother? They're actually such different adaptations of Roald Dahl's source material that they both make for great films in their own right overall. I do stand by, however, the idea that in between the musical sections of 2022's Matilda, you are sort of just wishing you were watching the original Matilda. But some credit I will give this new Matilda is that now when I watch the old Matilda, I do miss some of the musical numbers. Overall, I do suggest you watch both because I think they're both great. Thank you so much for watching. I have a follow-up video to my Wonka video coming out in the next week or so, hopefully. I just need to finish both the books, so stick around for that. Please subscribe if you enjoy this video. Also, let me know what you'd like me to talk about in the comments. I don't just talk about Roald Dahl stuff. I also want to talk about really adult content, so please just let me know. Thank you so much for watching and have a lovely day.